First of all, I want to thank you for joining our session today on TxDOT Information Security Requirements. Please do be aware we are recording this session for future reference. With that, it's my privilege to introduce to you my friend and partner, Andres Roos. Andres goes by Andy, but around the office, we just refer to him as the legend. Andy has spent the past 2.5 decades becoming an expert in information security. He has an MBA and MIS and a bachelor's in computer science to go along with the 9 information technology certificates he has earned. As a member of the board of directors and sector chief of Houston's InfraGard, sponsored by the FBI, Andy is recognized as an expert in information security across many industries. Andy serves as a Chief Information Security Officer for 5Factor, where he elevates our clients' technology experience by providing hassle-free 5-star information security services. With that, I will turn the session over to Andy, the legend.
Thank you, Roger. You're too nice. You're too nice. Well, welcome everyone. We are really looking forward to have this session with all of you. One of the things that Roger and I care about is to share this information with you, and we want this to be like a education, but at the same time where you can give us your comments. So please feel free at any time to give a chance to the Q&A, send your questions, send your comments, and then we're going to try to be answering those as we go. And with that, let's talk about a little bit of the agenda today. So I don't know if you guys like or have read something from Simon Sinek, but he always said that you need to start with the why. And I think that that's very important, because when we talk about what TxDOT is doing about the information security requirements, we need to talk about the information security trends. So I'm going to start with that. And then we're going to jump in what are those requirements. And then we're going to dive in some of their policies and some of their controls. And I'm going to close with some takeaways for everyone. Now, this presentation is prepared for people who have some exposure to these requirements, but it's also prepared for people who has never had a chance to even open one of these documents. At 5Factor, and especially in my case, I do the heavy lifting of reading all these documents and try to kind of interpret what they say for our clients. And that's what we're trying to do today with you guys. So let's start talking about trends. And it's very important to understand the why with information security trends, because let's be honest, this game is a game that sadly is going in the wrong direction that it's supposed to be. And I have some statistics from you, sadly are from 2021, because we don't have still the 2022 statistics. We're too soon in the year. But some of the statistics that we can see that the FBI reports is that they can see an increase of almost 7% of crime reported to them. And let's be clear, as you can imagine, not every crime gets reported to the FBI. Sadly, in Texas, we are second in the list of victim losses by state. As you can see, that's probably something that we don't want to get the silver coin or the silver medal for us to be second. So still we're half of the California losses by state, but still is pretty high, even comparing with number 5, which is almost 30% of what we are losing in our state. Now, apart from this increase, the FBI has also reported that there is a common scheme in the criminals about these 5 kind of threats. Number one is malware. The second one is business email compromise. And the third, more reported, is criminal use with cryptocurrency. So those are the 3 biggest things that they have seen a tremendous impact in the last year when people get reported. But let's say that, for some point, the FBI, this is what they do. They investigate crime, and they say, well, this may be a little bit negative. So I want to share with you one of the main reports, and I just have to pick one because there's so many. But we have a partner, Fortinet, which I'm sure that you guys know, and they have sensors deployed all over the world. And with these sensors, they have the ability to recognize when they see any type of traffic. And they have seen that there is almost a 10.7 X increase from the Q2 of 2021 in the amount of ransomware that these sensors are identifying in all these devices. So as you can see, what TxDOT is doing is based on something that is really, really happening. And TxDOT is doing it because the government is asking them to do it. But at the same this is in the back of why now companies are pursuing more requirements when we talk about information security in the supply chain of the service. And we want to put this in reference so when you see the requirements, you understand why some of this happens. So with that, let me get started with the requirements. So all these bubbles that you can see here are different documents. The top bubbles, the three top bubbles are the controls catalogs. And these three documents are the base where you will see a very, very long list of different controls for privacy and security, for security and privacy, that the different entities have. Now, the very first one that everything comes from is the NIST 853. That's the document that all the federal systems have to use to develop their own controls. Now, from that document, Texas DIR, Department of Internal Resource, they developed their own catalog. And from that catalog, then TxDOT took their kind of source and developed their own catalog. So the blue one here is the TxDOT catalog. This is the kind of Texas catalog, and this is the federal catalog. So as you can see, those three documents, they are related. They have the same names of the controls, the same families, but they have some variables in how you deploy those catalogs with certain flexibility in what they can do when they develop those catalogs. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have been in business since 2019, a couple of years ago. I remember one of the clients that we have to develop the information security strategy for them, and they received the famous Attachment G. I'm sure some of you remember Attachment G. Attachment G was the first approach that TxDOT had to actually comply with the DIR controls. So if you read that Attachment G in your contract, TxDOT was referring to these controls because they didn't have a catalog at that time. So that was the first approach. And some of the requirements that they asked in that Attachment G in 2019, they actually transform and increase based on the first policy that they created related to data classification. This is where TxDOT is classifying their own information and is saying, hey, if you handle information or if we handle the information, this is how we are going to categorize. Which, by the way, we're going to spend a little bit of time in some of these documents because all these documents are really, really long, and I want to put some emphasis in some of the places for some of them. So from that data classification, what they did is they combine the catalog with the classification, and they created Attachment I, or what is called Information Resources and Security Requirements. Now, that's a document that is going to be core for whenever you talk about information security if you have to conduct business with TxDOT. Now, last year, actually in 2021, the Senate passed a bill 475, and that's a very important bill that we're going to discuss in a second, because that bill is kind of mandated all the agencies in Texas to request some specific information for evidence that is related to your security controls. Now, that bill has a lot of different things. The important things for you is the vendor relationship with Texas. And something that I really, really like, and I cannot say enough words what TxDOT has been doing, is they created this questionnaire to help their clients to understand where they are and how they can kind of be in compliance with some of these requirements. So this questionnaire that they developed, which, by the way, they're already in version 2.0, this questionnaire is actually helping everyone who is conducting business with TxDOT about how they have to comply with some of these requirements. Now, I had one client a couple of months ago and asked me, okay, but when this happened, right? So on top, we have the control catalogs, and I'm showing you just the last iteration of the versions, right? This is a live thing. As you can imagine, there's new versions, every couple of years. So NIST revision 5 is from, at the end of 2020, and that is kind of the father of the control catalogs. And as you can see, DR has their version 2 beginning of last year, and the last version, which is 2.2 from the TxDOT security catalog, was also updated last year around quarter 3. Now, from those three catalog documents, the timeline for the other documents I'm also showing you. So the Senate bill was kind of effective at the beginning of 2022. The data classification policy, this is the new version, which also they modified it sometime last year. And then you have that attachment I, which is the information resources and security requirements, which is from actually November of last year was the last update. And the TxDOT questionnaire version 2 is also very recent. And the last document I want to talk to you today in this timing is the reconnection attestation. And that document, and I'm going to spend 1 second talking about that document because we're not going to spend a lot of time in that document. That document talks about in case that you are handling TxDOT data and you have been breached, what you need to do to be able to come back and continue conducting business, and how you have to report that you are already solving the incident, and you and the owner of the business, a legal authority, have to sign an attestation that you are complying with all those requirements that you are listed in the catalog, with some evidence that you have to present. So that's a very one-page important document that in case you get in trouble, you have to be familiar with. So as you can see, if someone saw me presenting this 1 year ago, all these documents already changed. So the classification policy was created in 2021. This document here, the information resource and security requirements, is quite new also. And then, of course, the TxDOT questionnaire version 2 is also new with the reconnection attestation. These are from December of last year. Now, when we talk about the catalogs, we have to be very careful about how we select these catalogs, right? NIST 153 Revision 5 is not a catalog that is going to comply with you, because that's a federal is for federal information system. So this is something, that this is a great, framework, but I will not recommend you to use it for your developing your own strategy, right? The same thing with DIR. DIR is the Texas one that they develop for developing their own controls. And the last one that we have here is the catalog for TxDOT, which provides kind of the complete set of minimum security controls to process, store, transmit, or maintain TxDOT data. If you do business with TxDOT, that's the one that I will say start reviewing, start understanding, start seeing, because that is the one that's going to impact your business. That's the catalog that you probably want to use when you kind of understand how you want that security practice to be. Now, when we talk about the bottom part of these three documents, I want to talk about the three of these documents, and then we'll go back to the SB 475. The classification policy is pretty much telling you if something is confidential, sensitive, public, and regulated. Now, something very important, because I get this question is something that the clients ask me. How do I know what type of information, I'm handling? And the answer to that is that needs to be present in the contract that you sign with TxDOT. That's where you go to find out what is the classification. The classification is not established by you, it's established by TxDOT. That's very, very important here. So it's not that you have to classify the information. TxDOT already classified the information for you. The only thing that you have to make sure is that you comply with the requirements that are associated with that classification layer. The second question I receive is, hey, Andy, I don't find this classification. I don't have it. So if you don't find it, the default classification that TxDOT wants you to follow is the confidential one. So again, two things. You do not have to do your own classification for TxDOT data. They are going to provide it to you in their contracts or in their request for proposal. And if you don't see that, I will always recommend you to ask. But the default classification, if you don't have one in your contracts, is the confidential one. Just to be very clear, it's not public, it's not sensitive, it's not regulated, it's the confidential one. And then, when I was preparing the presentation, I said, should I explain the different categories to you guys? I said, no, because I think this is going to be confused for you. Do not depend on your own judgment to do the classification. TxDOT is the one who owns the classification. The second document that we're going to spend a lot of time, so we're going to just explain a little bit how it's divided, is the attachment I, or information resources and security requirements. And that document has two different sections. One is about data requirements, and the other one is about information security requirements. There is a word that I will tell you that you will see all over the place in these documents, and it should be in your contracts, that is about TxDOT data. remember that all things that we discuss here are going to be TxDOT data, not information that is not related to TxDOT. So the last document I want to talk in this presentation is the questionnaire. So we already have the second version of the questionnaire, and the questionnaire is just a guide to help you to understand where you are related to your privacy or security and privacy controls. So we're going to get deep in some of these documents, so don't worry if you have questions about them. But anyway, feel free if you have any questions to use the Q&A, and Roger is monitoring that for me. So thank you, Roger, for doing that. So let's talk about the SB 475. This is not a super big bill, but it has a lot of different things that are not going to be relevant for you. One example can be that they discuss the option to have like a cybersecurity SOC for using one of the universities in Texas. That's of course something that it doesn't apply to you. But there's two important things in that document. One, they talk one more time about the data classification and retention. So data classification and retention. And the second very important part is that the vendors meet the security controls required under their contract, and they have to provide evidence. So I took a screenshot of that bill on this paragraph that I want to read to you. I'm not, I apologize for my English, it's not that good, but I think this is important for you guys. So this is from that bill. So section 2054-138 says security controls for state agency data, which by the way, if you manage TxDOT data, this applies. Each state agency entering into or renewing a contract with a vendor authorized to access, transmit, use, or store data for the agency shall include a provision in the contract requiring the vendor to meet the security controls the agency determines are proportionate with the agency's risk under the contract based on the sensitivity of the agent's data. Look at this part now. The vendor must periodically provide to the agency evidence that the vendor meets the security controls required under contract. Let's be very clear. This is not TxDOT. This is the Texas government asking their agencies to start including this in their contracts. And that's why we help a lot of our clients to read their contracts related to the information security controls. You see that this is happening, right? We have multiple clients approach us and say, hey, we can see that this is actually now being included. We can see that they're requesting us to provide at least the questionnaire complete with some dates and with some yes or no and with some plans and documents back to them. Now, this is the biggest change that we have seen in legislation in the last year in our state. I would tell you that we have been talking about this with our clients for the last year. Now we can see that TxDOT is pushing this to their contracts, which we knew will happen. And again, this we honestly can understand why this is happening when we see all the other trends going in the direction they are. And that's why we want to give you that context to explain why they are pushing this in this way. So let's talk about some of the policies and some of the controls. Again, we talk about this attachment I, and I'm not going to go all the attachment I what it says. This is a good document for you if you want to go to sleep at night or if you don't care about the information security to get and try to understand by yourself. But I'm going to highlight some of the sections that I feel they're important for you. The first one that I'm going to spend a little bit of time is in data and requirements, and we're going to talk about first backup and disaster recovery. So one of the things that is a best practice for every business is the business continuity plan. Now, in this document, they say that the contractor, that means you being a contractor of TxDOT, shall implement a business continuity plan, at least for the minimum things that are described between those brackets. So fire, theft, natural disasters, technical difficulties, workforce problems, equipment failure, or other business disruptions. So I will tell you pretty much for everything that can happen that will activate a VCP. So as you can see, if you didn't have a VCP and you get in a contract now, you have to have that in place. The second thing is about maintaining a disaster recovery plan. This is a document that from what I can smell in the industry. A lot of companies, they already have work on, they already have some version of this. Well, they are just saying that you have to have a document and that you have to have a plan in case that something happened, and that you have to pretty much demonstrate that you have one. The second thing, or another part that this data requirements section has, is about encryption. Now, it's very interesting because they say that you should, so again, talking about TxDOT data, you should encrypt whatever is categorized as sensitive, confidential, and regulated. Of course, as you can imagine, if something is public, there's not a lot of reason why you have to encrypt something that is categorized as public. But at the end, they are asking you to encrypt that information in transit and while at rest. So let's talk about that from a small moment. So in transit means when the information is moving from your computer to your server, or from your computer to the internet. Like, for example, if you're using, I don't know, Office 365 and using SharePoint, when you connect using your browser normally is encrypted in transit because it's sending information through your browser. Now, while at rest, this is very important because this is where some of our clients get in trouble. While at rest means if you're going to store data for TxDOT, that needs to be encrypted at rest. That means if you're storing data in one of your servers at your office, that needs to be encrypted. If you're storing data at your computer, that needs to be encrypted. So that's a very important thing. If you're categorizing information in sensitive, confidential, regulated, that information needs to be encrypted. And they have some definitions about how to encrypt information following the catalog control. So I would recommend you to take a look at that. The second portion of this attachment I is about security requirements, information resources and security requirements. The very first section is about the security safeguard. And when they talk about security safeguards here, they are describing something that is related to administrative, physical, or technical controls, which can be different. A good example can be an administrative control is a policy, for example, to give you an idea. So they talk all the ways that those safeguards can apply. And they're very, very careful to say that these are controls that are appropriate to pretty much protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of TxDOT data. Okay, remember, we talk about TxDOT data. This is all about TxDOT data. This is not about the rest of your stuff in your environment. This is 100% talking about TxDOT data. A second part of this attachment I on the security requirements that I want to talk to you about is this potential cybersecurity incident or breach notification. This is the first time, when I was, reading this document the first time, is very interesting, this potential cybersecurity incident. So they want you to pretty much let them know as soon as you perceive that something like an incident has happened to you. They describe this as an event which may result in an incident. So this is a very different way of reporting versus the breach notification. They have a page, and you will see that in the references section that we have here, where you will be able to report an incident to TxDOT if something like that happened. So I would recommend you to bookmark that and have it in your incident response plan, because that's where you have to respond it. The information security or security training, this is a very old requirement. Even if you read attachment G, was already there. So this is pretty much making sure that you are training your users to recognize, anything that can be malicious, like phishing, social engineering, and other type of threats. The last portion of this one is the background checks. And this is also in the questionnaire, by the way. So they're saying that you have to do some specific background checks to your employees and any contractor that you have that is going to access TxDOT data or TxDOT systems. And just to give you a couple of ideas of what that, so first of all, you need to do background checks before you give them access. So this is not like a real-time monitoring background checks. This is before you provide them access, you have to do these background checks. And when they ask what type of background checks, there's a long list, but I'm going to give you some of the examples. Here it says the verification of the social number, felony, misdemeanor, arrest, conviction in the past 7 years. And then another example is sex offender registry. So there is a lot of requirements about what type of background checks you have to do. This is the classic change in process. that you have to go back to your HR team and saying, hey, TxDOT now is asking us to do all these background checks whenever we are going to hire someone. Or where we are, and also this needs to be in your contracts with whenever you contract someone, that those background checks needs to be done before people can start accessing their data or their systems. Roger, how are we doing with the questions? Any questions so far? I don't see anything on the chat, so I'm going to assume that people is okay. No questions.
So far, so good.
Okay, so let me continue then. Okay, so again, this is an important change. The background checks. Let me finish with this. Is because a lot of the clients that we conduct this assessment, that we conduct the TxDOT questionnaire assessment, they a lot of people say that they don't do that. So and this is one of the things that sadly now TxDOT is asking you that you have to do. That you may not do one of these background checks that they're asking you. Well, now you have to do it. And it's not only do it for your employees, but also for your contractors, which creates a little bit of complexity whenever you're managing a contract, whenever you're managing someone else doing and accessing their data. The other one that I want to read to you, and this is very aligned to the SB 475, is the demonstrating compliance with information security requirements. This is part of Attachment I. Attachment I is the new document that you will receive again when you sign a contract with TxDOT, and this is what this says. Prior to contract award, a renewal, and on a recurring basis, contractor must provide a TxDOT security questionnaire as documented in the contract. Additional, upon reasonable notice, the contractor, and if TxDOT determines that the contractor has violated this agreement, TxDOT directly or through its agent may request an attestation, which may include additional attestations and evidence that the contractor is compliant with the applicable laws, regulations, and standards outlined in Section 3.5. So as you can see in this attachment I, TxDOT is pretty much saying exactly the same thing that SB 475 was requesting everyone in Texas, in all the Texas agencies to do. That section 3.5 is very long. We're not going to go and talk about every one of the applicable laws and regulation that can happen. So, okay, so we have a question. It says, how recent do background checks have to be? So from what I can read at the moment is prior. So I'm going to read to you what that said, because I checked that one. So it says, contractor shall ensure that the background check is performed on each contractor-related entity prior to that person receiving access to any TxDOT system. So what I can read from here is that this is at the moment of hire or at the moment of contracting. I would tell you that we have some clients in the banking industry, in the financial services industry, and this is a periodic check. This is not a one-time check. What they're asking you right now is that one-time check, one time. Thank you, David. So going back to this compliance, so they are aligning this with SB 475, and there is a lot of law regulations and standards in that section 3.5 that I would highly recommend you guys to read, especially if you're going to sign this agreement with them, this contract with them, because there's more than we will be able to cover in the time that we have planned for today. But again, one more time, this is very, very aligned to what we have seen around. Okay, so let's talk about some of those. So I prepared a little bit of what I can see that is going to be relevant for you, knowing a little bit the audience that we send this invitation from a webinar. So there is a section in that applicable law and regulations in attachment I, in that section 3.5, that talks specifically about the DIR controls catalog and the applicable TxDOT security requirements. So as we discussed before, we have the data classification, and then that data classification is going to request you to have a security baseline to protect the information. Now, some of that information may have an overlay, and that overlay is normally going to be to sensitive or regulated information. Now, as you can see from this graphic, there's no high baseline. There's no high baseline because a high baseline applies to the TxRAMP level 2 or the FedRAMP information. So if you provide cloud services to to TxDOT, and within those cloud services, you are classified under TxRAMP level 2, or you are classified under the FedRAMP high baseline, then that security baseline will be high. Now, I will tell you from the experience on the clients that we deal, no one's at that level. We have clients at the moderate baseline because they're managing confidential or regulated information, but the majority of the clients that we have is under the public low baseline classification. Now, again, it's very important that you know the data classification because that's going to tell you what are the controls in the baseline that you have to be complying with. I cannot say that enough. So this relationship between the classification and the baseline is going to be present in the data classification policy from TxDOT, in the catalog, in the information security catalog, and is also here in attachment I. Now, I have to thank a friend of mine, Trevor, who sent me this information, which I recommend you guys. We're going to make sure that you guys have this presentation, but take a screenshot of this one. So there are some organizations that are actually actively working with TxDOT to develop a little better understanding about the disciplines, the type of provider and how they will classify the information. And this is not because that information will not be in the contract. It's because they want to understand, if they're going to pursue a contract or they want to create a new strategy from their business, what will be, their requirements from a security perspective. So thank you, Trevor, to allow me to show this. The TxDOT seems, from what Trevor was telling me, is that they're working in getting kind of a final version public to all of us. But this is kind of the best version and the latest version that we have on this. So as you can see on the discipline sign on the left, I'm sure you guys do a lot of those things that are explained there. Bridge inspection, CEI, materials engineering, surveys, traffic engineering. Now, if you do that type of work, the classification is what you can see. And as you can see, the majority of them are on the low baseline, maybe except with the bridge inspection, which has a moderate baseline. So this is not a complete list. This doesn't represent something that you have to take and you have to not pay attention to this in your contract. This is just a guidance to give you an idea of how TxDOT has been classifying their information based on the discipline or the type of contract that you're going to get from them. Okay? Again, thank you, Trevor, for letting me share this information. Okay, so let's talk about the catalog. Now, when we talk about the catalog is a little more comprehensive. It has a lot of controls. The classification that we talked a second ago is going to help you understand what control baseline you have to have. Now, before talking about the control baseline, we need to talk about this minimal assessed control. So people ask us all the time where to start. We're going to talk about that path, and we're going to mention this. But as you can see, you have 59 controls in this section, in these families, that you have to have in place for you to be able to comply. So these are, again, one more time, as the title says, the minimal asset controls. The only very important thing to reflect here that is not present in the NISA 153 is the PII processing and transparency. This is something kind of related to this particular catalog that they created for that. All the rest of the families are present in the rest of the catalogs that we have seen. Now, this is a very interesting one because we get the question a lot. So, Andy, what happens if I am low? How many controls do I have? What happens if I'm moderate? So as you can see, depending on the baseline classification, there is way more obligations that you have to comply when you talk about security requirements. And I think this is very relevant to why you have to understand very well the classification that you have, because that's where you will understand what is coming your way. And let's be very clear, all the documents that we just read, every one of them is talking about to be compliant with these requirements, with this control catalog, with this amount of controls. Okay, now, again, I honestly admire what they did, because honestly, I have to say, they care about you guys, because they created this questionnaire And with this questionnaire, the intention, I can read the intention. The intention was to pretty much help you out, to prioritize, right? Because we have some clients that they just started their information security journey. So complying with 300 controls is almost, it's going to be very hard for them. So what they did with this questionnaire is saying, okay, this is where we'll ask you. This is what we ask you. This is what you should be prioritizing. Now, this is just a screenshot of the questionnaire. So for example, I'm showing you 3 questions that are very related, very, very important related to what type of information, what are the control baseline, and if you have any overlay related to that information. So as you can see, depending on how you answer these questions, then all the rest of the questions apply or not for the requirements that you may have. Now, that questionnaire is very important that you understand how it's prepared. They have 12 questions in the general information. Those are, a lot of those questions are, hey, what is your business name? What is the tax ID? What is the person responsible for your information security? And then they have questions about the data classification, your baseline. They have questions about the overlay. And they will also ask you if you went through a formal process of assessment, you or your vendor, about cybersecurity controls. So those are the general questions in number 1. Now, as you can see, if you are a low baseline, then you have to answer section 2, which has 24 questions. So everyone needs to complete this part, and you're done. You don't have to do anything else. Now, if you're on the moderate side, you have to complete another 31 questions. And if you have a privacy overlay, you have to complete another 10 questions. And as you can see, all these questions are accumulating on requirements that you may have to comply. Now, this questionnaire has three different type of questions that they will ask you. One is going to be a lot about governance and policies. They're going to ask you, hey, do you have this policy? Do you have this process? Do you have these roles and responsibilities described in your organization? So that's what we normally would call like an administrative type of control. The second one is going to ask you particularly if you have a specific control in place. For example, security awareness and training. Do you provide security awareness and training to your people? And I would tell you that in that case, I would say that's a yes/no question. And they will ask you, do you have it? Yes or no? And if you don't have it, they will ask you about the plan. And this is the second part, which I really, really appreciate from this section. The planning is going to ask you about, if you don't have something, they will ask you, hey, when do you plan to do it, right? It's not about just saying no. It's about, okay, you say no, but then when you plan to do it. I think we have a question, right, Roger? So something pop up.
Yes. So will Windows BitLocker be okay to use on the laptops?
Yes, that will be perfectly fine. That will be your encryption at rest. And let's be very clear, that will be a perfect example of something that you can control, that is free, that you can deploy in your laptops, and it's going to be a good control for your encryption at rest for TxDOT data. Thank you, George, for the question. Okay, so this questionnaire, no problem. This questionnaire is going to be very heavy about those 3 things. It's going to ask you, do you have a document that says what you will be doing? Do you have the control to actually technically control what you're doing? And then do you have a plan? So those are the 3 things that this questionnaire wants to ask. And again, let's be very clear, because I'm passionate about this. This is trying to help you guys. This questionnaire is honestly trying to help you, because one thing is to answer this amount of questions versus the catalog. Now, let's be very clear. You have to comply with the catalog, not with the questionnaire. But this is a good guidance for you to understand where you can probably get it going. And with that, I'm going to close with some takeaways. So the first one, I know every organization is different, but if you say, hey, Andy, you know what? We're quite the first time that we see this. We don't have an information security strategy in place. We have not kind of understand what all these requirements are, I would recommend you to start assessing your maturity using the TSQ. That would be the first place I will go. It will be too daunting if you want to do the catalog. It's going to be very hard for you. So I would take advantage of the questionnaire, get it completed. And of course, I will always recommend you to hire someone who can understand the questions for you and give you guidance on priority based on the questionnaire. That questionnaire, whenever you complete it, then you can use it to submit it again if the TxDOT people comes to ask you. So it's a win-win to get that questionnaire done. So that's where I would start if you don't have anything. The second thing I would tell you is that when you complete that TSQ, just remember that this is not about technical controls only, right? You may very well have a security awareness and training, but if you don't have a policy about that, that means that that control is not deployed fully. So you have to have the 3 legs. And this is not TxDOT, by the way. This is a information security 101. You have to have a policy that represents the control that you're deploying. And then at the end, you have to have a good plan or a program that is going to move your maturity to where it needs to be. So this is security 101 and best practice when you talk about security. So nothing, honestly, that they are asking you in that questionnaire is not aligned to what we have seen in other industries. Now, whenever you complete that, whenever you have that done, then you can kind of give you a gap analysis of where you need to be based on the baselines, right? The baselines, remember that's where you're signing that you're going to be, and then you can say, okay, based on that, I can prioritize my baseline. And my recommendation is to always start with the minimum, low, moderate, high, right? So use that order to prioritize where you need to be maturity-wise. So if you have a low baseline classification and you completed the TSQ, then you can have those 2 jumps. Okay, how I get to my minimal, how I get to my low baseline, just to compare where you are from a requirement perspective. I would tell you something, this is my personal opinion, is there's no way that someone can expect you to go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in a very short period of time. Security requires maturity. Security requires time. Security requires change control and change management. Those type of things an organization can consume at certain pace. So don't kill the organization trying to deploy all this at the same time, because it's not going to work. And you're actually not going to protect your organization. You're going to actually damage your operation, which would be not good for your business. The last thing is very related to what I just described. Information security is a journey. It's a program that never ends. So the way that you demonstrate that journey is working is like you go and you do your plan and you execute your plan. I like to give this as an example. This journey is like when you go to your doctor and you discuss with the doctor that you want to get healthy. That assessment that we discuss is here your blood work, your whenever you step up on the weight, and all the other analysis that you do on your annual checks. The doctor will come back and tell you, hey, if you want to get healthy, these are the 3 or 4 things that you have to do. Now, there's going to be some things in those things that the doctor will tell you that are going to be pretty much more urgent than other things. And that's what the journey is about, is that you can start making those changes little by little so you become healthy, so your organization becomes more compliant with these requirements, and at the end, more protected, and you can protect this data. So these are some of the references that we have for today, and I'm going to, whenever we share the presentation, we can send this to you guys. So the only one that I'm going to make sure that you have is this one is probably the most important one for all the references. This is where all these documents that we just talked today are. TxDOT is doing a tremendous job in making this information available for us to consume. So that's where you can go and find all these documents, and you also can find the links for reporting your cybersecurity incidents. And with that, I'm going to close. Again, I'm leaving you my email there and my name. Please contact me LinkedIn. Please contact me if you have questions. If you have any doubt of what we have talked today, feel free to just send me comments, or anything that you wanted to discuss with us, we are here to help. We're here to help you to walk that path, to get through that journey, because we want you to be protected and we want you to not have trouble with these new requirements. And with that, I'm not sure if we have any questions. Roger, do you see any?
No more questions. I don't see any. All right, no more questions.
Well, with that, thank you everyone for participating. We really enjoy the meeting today. So Michael is asking when the slides. Oh, that disappeared. Give me 1 second, Michael.
Yeah, when will the slides and video be available?
Yeah, send me an email so I can send you the slides, Michael. I'm not sure if I can post the slides in this chat. If not, whoever is interested in the slides, send me. You guys can send me an email and we'll share with you. The video probably we're going to post it in LinkedIn very soon.
One other question, when did you say these requirements will begin in our contracts?
I'm already seeing them. So I have seen them already for the last, I would say for the last year. I have at least, in the last month, I have at least 2 clients who show me attachment I in their contracts with TxDOT.
Thanks.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas, for the shout out.
So yes, and if you have questions where you are, if you want to do the assessment with us, contact us. We will be happy to do the assessment with you, tell you where you are, give you recommendations. That's what we do. Okay. Then thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and let us know if we can help you anyway.